Hey guys, welcome aboard. This is Synchro Mystic. I'm Wayne McCroy. This is Richard Willett. Together we're tearing apart the narratives that the mainstream media throws at us on a daily basis, and we're getting to the root of all of the nonsense in this world. And it always ties back to occultism, and there's a select few groups at the topmost levels of the power structure that always seem to have their grubby fingers in all of it. Is that not true, Richard? How are you today, my friend? Always a pleasure to speak to you.
I'm good, thank you. I'm so glad we get to sit down and do this one because we spoke about this a while back and it's starting to happen. Now, we've just had the Pope and the King of England, whatever you might think of that term, King Charles, I think he's the third, might be the second, King Charles and the Pope, for the first time praying together. So you have the Church of England and the Catholic Church, two parts of the Christian church coming together. What, Wayne, this is your field as well. I can't wait to get your take on what is actually happening. I'm getting all sorts in my mind about alchemical weddings. I'm getting other things in my mind about Jordan Maxwell. I remember him saying a long while ago that the Vatican were put in charge of looking after the planet, and they handed it over to the king a while back. Then you had the split from the church. So there's always been that connection there in the background where the Catholic Church and the Church of England haven't really been separate, in my opinion. What is your take on what's going on?
My take on what's going on is this is the playing of the dualities, one against the other, as always with all of this stuff. It's the polarity principle at play. So the Catholic Church, the Vatican, and the Church of England have always been at odds for the longest time with various different doctrines in Christian theology. And this represents a reunion of these two opposing sides, these two polarized forces of the Christian world based church, if you want to put it that way. Because here's the thing, whether or not it's a true reflection of Christianity as a whole, technically the Vatican always represents the mainstream leadership face of what is presented in the world as the Christian church. And of course, you had the opposing side of this. The Church of England has always stood as kind of the model for Protestantism within the Christian religion. So you have Catholicism and Protestantism. And this is kind of like a reunion of those two opposing factions in Christendom. And this is a big representation that's being symbolically played out on the world stage right now. So you have this reunification of purpose between these two opposing branches of Christianity. At least that's what they represent, okay, symbolically. Now, don't get me wrong, the Pope himself does not represent the vast majority of Christians in the world these days, even if he does represent the Catholic faith, and a lot of the Catholic people have actually taken a step back from where the popes have gone over the course of the past several years with a lot of their theological changes and stuff they've been introducing. So it goes counter to what's been taught in mainline Christian theology, first and foremost. So a lot of people don't really see that as a true representation of what Christianity really is. And then the opposite side, you have the Church of England always kind of represented the Protestant Reformation side of things. So this was also a world leader symbolically put in place to represent Christianity as a whole. So you have these two opposing factions, and there's so many different factions of Christianity at this point, but these are the two main ones that always seem to get represented out there in the main zeitgeist. So when you have the two of these being reunified again into this ecumenical type of a movement, it's a hugely symbolic gesture that's been made. So that's the important thing we need to graft onto. And this relates to other things too. And we'll get to that because we see how they're playing off these world religions, the big three
Mhm.
monotheistic religions, the Abrahamic religions, all against one another right now. And there's a reason for this. This, of course, ties back to the whole Hegelian dialectic ploy of thesis plus antithesis equals synthesis. They're trying to build something new, their new world order. And they're doing this through the manipulation of Christian fundamentalism on one side, and we'll see later Islamic fundamentalism on the other side. Fundamentalism, excuse me, I can't speak today. But at any rate, this is what's going on. So this is symbolically a reunification of Christianity under one umbrella in the eyes of the world, essentially, symbolically. That's what's represented here on a more esoteric level. They're trying to combine all of the disparate factions of Christianity together into one unified spirit of the time. Now, the term zeitgeist means spirit of the time. And of course, they're trying to reunify Christianity into this one spiritual element. And there's a reason for that. And it's all goes across the bounds of different occult teachings and stuff like that. And maybe we'll touch on that a little bit more later. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what this is. I know you had referenced alchemical wedding, and in a sense, it kind of is a type of alchemical wedding. And we talked about this clear back, when was it? In January or February or something like that, about the arisal of the new Roman Empire. And then we saw the former pope died and they installed this new pope, Pope Leo. And we touched on all these things, and now it's coming to fruition before our eyes, isn't it? So we need to touch a little bit on that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
It's absolutely fascinating. So we've said in the past that the West represents Rome when it's the fall of the West, and we talked about Rome falling, and it does say in the biblical text that Rome fell twice, if you read it that way. So this would be the rise and the fall again of that Rome. So to play out these biblical kind of prophecies or genders, they have to literally follow this script to set it up to follow the script. What I find fascinating about this, and I've been looking at this recently, in terms of belief systems, now in a quantum sense, because these two systems, these two sides of the Christian belief system, and all the Abrahamics come from the same source. That they springboard off the same stories and mythologies and narrative characters. Not, and they're all obviously different from each other, thus being played off against each other. But if you look on it at a quantum level, like I think these alchemists do, they would all always be quantum entangled with each other. So when you attack one, you attack all. And I think that these dark occultists that are using the Abrahamic faiths, and I'm not saying there's no truth to the Abrahamic faiths, I'm not religious in any way, shape, or form, but I have a respect for anybody like yourself who absolutely is. It's you know, people get to believe whatever they want, but it's in terms of the quantum level and of how this reality works. I'm really interested in the idea, and it's my own idea, my own concept, that these three Abrahamic religions were always quantum entangled with each other. They carried the seed of each other within them. So when the one was attacked, actually they were attacking them, they are attacking themselves now, but they were being attacked all. So these two sides coming back together, Christianity, the Protestant and Catholic coming back together after it was split, would represent to me the two sides of a quantum split coming back together, but they were always connected and entangled. So if you and I don't mean, and I think I need to explain the fact that if you look at these as concepts of understandings of reality, that they're in the minds of an occultist who understands how reality works on a quantum level, they will know that these two sides of the Catholic Church were always interdependent on each other, if that makes sense. So now they're coming back together. So they're an easier target once they're put back together, quite frankly. And this is what it's all about, the one, the collapsing into, the great reset. It's bringing it all back into one. Now, I've come up with the idea that I've been saying for a while. Like, I think we said it last time, that they divide us to rule, but they also divide themselves to rule. And that's what they've done. And I always believe that the Catholic, at the very deep occult level, I'm not talking about the people, I'm not talking about, they live in it, just separate the worlds. The real dark occult level that are using these faiths that are full of millions of great people, always they divided the church on purpose because they saw that there was an uprising against it. So they created the option of the Protestant Church of England through the excuse of King Henry VIII saying, I don't fancy my wife anymore, although he ended up chopped their heads off anyway. They they created these two choices, as you do in politics, these polarities. It's no excuse, no excuse, no coincidence that when they met and they prayed, the new Pope Leo the Lion, and King Charles III. King Charles was wearing a blue tailored suit, and the Pope was wearing a red outfit. Red and blue, the polarities. They are playing them off and bringing them back together, and they mess around with these polarities, but they know they're always quantum entangled together. So when they put the seed of, say, like Luciferianism or Satanism in through the likes of the Jesuits, the likes of the Freemasons, they know that that seed is quantum entangled with the original concept of those beings of the mythology. So they are spoiling the pot, if that's the best way I can put it. Does this make sense to you, Wayne?
Oh, it makes total sense, and you're spot on with what you're saying. They've always been one can't exist without the other. It's the polarity principle. You can't have darkness without light or light without darkness. It just doesn't work. There has to be the opposite. And they play these polar opposites off of one another. It's two sides of the same coin. And once again, we're seeing where they're trying to unify the commonalities of purpose with these for a reason, because in actually alchemically blending these back together into unity again, these two polarized forces, what they're doing is they're creating synthesis, as we talked about. Thesis plus antithesis equals synthesis. They're trying to build something new. So now they're going to build a new polarity off of it. And that's what we're seeing. And we're seeing this with the rise of Islam around the world in a lot of important places of power and prominence in Western culture in particular. And we see this just this past week, just a few days ago. New York City elected for mayor for the first time ever, a Muslim mayor. And this guy is, he's really something else. He's young, he's 34 years old. His name's Mamdani.
And what's his
Zor, Zor,
yeah, his first name?
yeah, Zor, is it Zoran or Zohar? I
Is
can't think of
Zoran,
it.
and it's basically a
Zor,
mixture between the Zohar and Meet the Zohan of Ben Stiller's film. It's literally the two together. So it is the Zohar. He's clearly the Zohar and the Zoran and Meet the Zoran. Was it Meet the Zohar? Zohar's the book. His name's Zoharan, I think, believe, and the Zohar, I think, is the Ben Stiller. One thing like that. It's the same word that they're clearly.
yeah,
Yeah,
Zoran is his
that's
name.
it.
That's what it is. Zoran Mamdani. And I went ahead before the show here and took the liberty of digging into the etymology of what this name means when you trace it back to its original linguistic roots. And it comes from Arabic, and it means the name Zoran means radiant, shining, or light, thus a reference to Lucifer. As always with this stuff, you can't make this up. I invite anybody, go ahead, just do a Google search on this stuff, and you'll find the same things. And his last name, etymology of, I lost it on my search here now. Oh, Mamdani. So Mamdani, the name Mamdani is, let me see. No, it's not going to give me the same search return. It figures these things are always like that. The name meaning. So that means, let's see, Mom Donnie. It's given me a different return now. This is the most peculiar thing, Richard, because I looked this up a couple hours ago, and it meant like exalted or something to that effect, or
Right. Okay.
it's Mom Donnie came from, and that was another Arabic term. And now I can't find it. Now I can't find the meaning of it.
So the
So
Zohar
let's see.
means light and splendor as well. So his
Right
first name is the which is the chief, the like other and the Tanya, which is in Chabad. But for mystical Judaism, you're looking at the Kabbalah and the Zohar really as their prime texts. So he's named after the prime text of this Kabbalistic cult. And it's insane, isn't it? Really?
here it is. Now I found it. It's amazing how these search returns get skewed when you're trying to do stuff like this. This happens to me all the time. So here it is. It's derived from a word mamdun, which means praised or commendable. So he's the commendable radiance. And this, of course, could be actually compared to a title for Lucifer,
Hmm.
really. And this is the ideology. I'm not saying the guy was purposely named this. This is part of how the synchromystic side of things always seems to tie in with world events like this. So now you have this guy that literally his name represents Lucifer on the world stage, and he's representing, whether he realizes it or not or intends it or not, he's representing Islam in the Western world. So they're playing these polarity principles against each other. Now, to give a little bit more context to this whole notion of the playing up of Islam here on the world stage right now, I'm going to read to you an excerpt from a letter from Albert Pike to Giuseppe Mazzini way back in 1871. Now, there's been a lot of controversy about this letter. Some people say that they don't really think that this was really from Pike to Mazzini, and they don't know who it's attributed to. The whole point is this was written in 1871 by whoever it was, and this information is out there in the public mindset for a reason. They tell you what they're doing in no uncertain terms. It's not their fault if you don't pay attention. But this is attributed, and this actually, I think, was in the British Museum for some time, this letter from Pike to Mazzini about World War III. I will read you the excerpt here. Quote, "The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other." I'm going to pause before I continue. Now remember, this was written in 1871. The nation of Israel did not exist at that time. They play the long game. But let's continue here. So it says that the political Zionists and the leaders of Islam, they're trying to construct this in such a way that they mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, and spiritual and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then, everywhere, the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment, be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. End quote from Albert Pike, written to Giuseppe Mazzini. And if you don't know who Mazzini is, you could look him up too. He was an important figure in Italy at that time, and he was also one of the agentur of the Illuminati, that organization back at this time. So we have all of that revealed to us in this letter. So the whole purpose here is they want to play off all of these Abrahamic faiths one against the other to bring out their true ideology into public view. And that's Luciferianism. And you'll notice that in this letter, there's a certain group from these Abrahamic faiths that are absent. And I'm sure you picked up on that right away,
Mm.
Richard.
Yep, yep.
Doesn't mention Judaism at all, but it does speak about Christianity becoming disillusioned and the Christians being wiped out, atheists being wiped out, and of course the implication here is Islam will be wiped out as well in one fell swoop. Well, what's left of the three major Abrahamic faiths? And I'll let the listener connect the dots himself for this and understand a little something about who at some of the topmost levels of the power structure in this world is pulling the strings. And it's not the entirety of that faith. Don't get me wrong. None of these faiths are problematic in and of themselves. It's the extremists and the occultists
Mm.
who are steering and guiding and directing these things, who have kind of taken advantage of the mechanisms of actions within these faiths and have weaponized them against the masses and against the belief structures of the people who follow these faiths. And there is one particular group within that overall power structure that seems to deflect a lot of different, how should we say, karma from a lot of this in different ways, and they don't seem to ever find themselves aligning into these two camps that they've sectioned off here, and this is what they're playing up into right now. So they want to kind of sit back and remain neutral in all of this and play their victim card with a lot of stuff when it's all kind of contrived and designed that way by these occultists who pretend to use Judaism
Mm.
as their crutch, and they use it as their guidebook and their playbook with a lot of things. And of course, you could fall back. Many of the teachings of Islam and of Christianity overlap into Judaism as well. They all come from the same source. They're Abrahamic religions, and much of the tradition goes back to the same stories told from different perspectives with a lot of this stuff. And they've weaponized this. These people who are running this, they do not believe in any particular religion. And this is what people get hung up on all the time. They do not believe in the precepts of this religion, but they will use it as a tool to control people in that way. These are what you call Luciferians, the ones that claim to have this philosophy or this Luciferian doctrine. Essentially, what it is it's secular humanism on steroids. They believe that man himself is God or can become God, and that he can do this through whatever means necessary. And they play on the belief systems of these three major Abrahamic religions to create synthesis, as we discussed earlier. Now, this looks like a control system in a lot of regards, and most organized religions have some semblance of this. Now, that's not to say that there's not value in these religions and there's not truth in these religions. And I'm a Christian, so I'll tell you, I know there is truth in Christianity, an abundance of truth, and you can find answers within that. The problem is these people have weaponized the beliefs, the fundamental beliefs of Christians against them, to control them, to steer them in certain directions, to manipulate them. And they've done the same thing with Islam, and
Mm.
they've done the same thing with Judaism, and they keep all these little factions infighting one from another, and they divide them on the little fine points of difference in opinion on certain things, and they keep them at odds with one another, and they conflate, and they, what's the word I'm looking for? They kind of foster this aggression and this conflict between these different parties. So they use their agentur to provoke and provocateur different actions on the world stage between these different religious factions. And it's all contrived. It's not anybody who actually has anything to do with the particular religion unless they've been manipulated by these occultists who run things at the top. And they've all been infiltrated. All the major religions have been infiltrated. All of the different belief systems at this point have been infiltrated by these people. And this is where a lot of times people lose the direction to look with a lot of this. They play the religions off of one another. Like they'll say, this is Islamic terrorism. That's something they invented. Islamic terrorism, yes. Terrorism gets carried out in the name of Islam, but the ones that provocateur that from above
Mm.
do not believe in the tenets of Islam. And that's the problem. They've used it. They've hijacked the whole process here, and they've turned it against us. They've used it as a manipulation tool. Same thing. You see all this extremism on the other side, and they've taken this notion of anti-Semitism now, and they've used that inverse modality as a weapon against people as well. So we have all of that, and I hope that makes a little more sense once you know the context with this letter with Pike to Mazzini and what they talked about. What they're trying to do is this is to invoke the reactions It's a reactionary movement that they were looking to build here with this. And they want to unleash this on the masses so that they fight to the point of total and absolute exhaustion and collapse. And they become disillusioned with their belief systems. And then they're looking for some other way to go. And that's when they introduce the Luciferian doctrine to them. And you could see it even in the names of some of the key players on the world stage right now. So there's all of that, Richard, and I hope I didn't lose anybody there.
No, what you're describing there, let's put this in the context of their own terminology. So in Judaism, they have a thing called a klepoth, spelt in different ways, but a klepoth and a seraphot. Seraphot is the good husk, sort of, and the klepoth is the evil husk. Now they hide. So take that as a concept. So they hide within a shell. It's a husk. It's a shell. Now they hide within that. So they use these Abrahamic religions, and I'm not saying they were designed that way, I'm not at all. But they use these Abrahamic religions as a husk to hide within, a shell to hide within, a shield. That's why they were the red shields, the Rothschilds, they were the red shields. They hide within like a virus the nucleus of something else. That's what they do. So when you had the Sabbateans, they were Sabbateans. They went in and sabotages. They became the Donme, which they pretended to be the Islamic faiths, but they carried on worshipping their Sabbatean Luciferian Satanist god in the background, and you had the same in the Christian faith as well. They went in there with the Jesuits and infiltrated the Jesuits, the Freemasons. They go in and infiltrate, but they hide within the faith as a husk. So when you look at what they're doing with Israel, and the world is turning on Israel now, and the people of Israel, they're using the people of Israel as a husk to push forward their Luciferian, as you say, agenda through because they don't care, because they're using them as cannon fodder and a shield, a battering ram, a Trojan horse. So what you're saying, so the Klepoth is the same concept. They use these concepts over and over again, and they're very, very easy to see when you once you realise what they're doing. Everything is used as a shield. So if you attack them, you're attacking. Oh no, you're attacking the Jewish faith. No, you're not. There's a nucleus in there that has, as you rightly say, they do not have any faith at all in any of these Abrahamic religions. Not at all. They used all three of them as a shield and have hollowed them out from within, like a virus. That's exactly what they are, a virus. And a great example of this is if you join the Freemasons. I wouldn't recommend it. Allegedly, when you get there, they have all the biblical texts, so to speak, all the faith text at the front. And it doesn't matter what God you believe in, as long as you believe in a higher power. They even say that in AA and all things like that, which also was started by the friends of the Rockefellers. And so they don't believe in any of these guys. They don't mind if you do, because they're using you as a shell, as a soldier of misfortune, to be able to push forward their Luciferian, as you say, satanic agenda. And they are different characters, but people say that Lucifer was Lucifer before he failed and became Satan. I don't want to argue about these things because they want you to argue about these things. It's an archetype, it's an energy, it's an evil. It doesn't matter what you call it. It really, really doesn't. And they laugh at people who argue over the most smallest nuance of this stuff because you're supposed to get stuck on this crap over and over again and argue amongst yourself because they're using you. And the great thing is that they can't do any of this without us. They have to use us to destroy each other. So Jordan Maxwell put out a video a while ago, and this was a great example of this. The Catholic Church, and this is from Jordan's perspective. I'm not saying it's true or not. I'm just giving you, he was well known and he's done a lot of great work, and people say he was a Luciferian and all this stuff, whatever. This stuff made sense to me. This bit anyway. He said that the Catholic Church was given the rights to the world. The Pope, sorry, not the Catholic Church, the Pope. The Pope was a bit because Jesus was given the earth. So Jesus was given the earth by God to look after. Jesus gave it. The Pope said he was representative of Jesus, of the church. So he was, but he was too busy. So he made a covenant with the King of England. So that's why they split the church. Now the covenant, what most people won't realize, is that the word Brit comes from berith, which means covenant in Hebrew, and Ish means man in Hebrew. British is the covenant man. That's what they're saying. So the Church of England was a caretaker manager for what the Catholics had. So they were always in cahoots. Not that they were quantum entangled anyway, but the point is that they were always working together. They were supposed to work together until the time was right to bring, as you say, synthesis, bring them back in together now. And what's really sad to see, not only the horrific stuff that happened in Ireland because of the Catholic and Protestant arguments, when you realise that they've both been pulled by the same awful families that have no faith in any of this stuff. They don't believe in any God, they believe in themselves, as you rightly say. It's really sad to see. And now you have, as you say, they're bringing up Islam against the Christians, especially here in the UK. And you can see, so the Christians are the covenant man, and the Islamic faith, they're going to destroy each other. And they're all, as you say, as I said, sorry, they are all quantum entangled with each other anyway, because they're born of the same stories, the same energy, the same data, Dayat, which is the forbidden knowledge, the 11th Sephirot, husk, shell, on the Kabbalah tree of life. It's all there once you understand it. You're like, these guys are playing this all off against each other. All of them. And there's not that many of them. So when you see what's happening in Israel and going down to this messianic agenda, this thing, Solomon's Temple, and which goes into the Freemasons and all of these, the Jesuits even have a saying, and they do actually speak about Solomon's Temple, but very rarely. These guys aren't Jesuits. They are not Catholic. They are not Jewish. They are not even they're not even sorry, Kabbalists in that sense that you would think they are. They are a nucleus within every factor of society that have infiltrated everything. And that infiltration is the energy of Satanism, which is the inversion of doing what they say they are going to do. They go in and they turn that which they infiltrate on its head, turn it inside out. And that's what you just need to understand. Everything these politicians are telling you, they're going to do the opposite. But you know that. But it's every single time it's the same play because they're idiots and they can't think of anything new. So that's why they have to use you and me against each other because they can't do it any other way. So that's the great news. That's the good news, if you want to put it that way. But the sad problem is 70% of the world's population are falling for this crap still right now. And it doesn't need to be this way because it's so goddamn obvious. The guy that's just taken over New York is named after the book of this cult, the Zohar, for God's sake. They're telling you and laughing at you as well, which is what I find really sad. I don't have any like particular religion, but I have loads of faith. My faith is in people and just good. Whatever makes you happy. Just don't harm anyone else. I can't understand why any religion would tell me that if someone else doesn't believe my religion, they should deserve to go to hell or be killed. That doesn't make sense to me. That seems like an inversion of what the actual original thing should be. Like it doesn't make sense. If you don't believe the same as me, Wayne, I'm not going to say, oh well, you should go to hell. I'm like, whatever. Do you want to go and have a picnic? Like it's just stupid, and it seems like the inversion of what was supposed to be. And to me, that's Satanism, and that's my rant over. But it really bugs me because it's so obvious. Me and Wayne aren't of the same religion, but we're of the same faith. We care about people, and that's all really you need.
Right. And that's all Jesus said we needed to do
Hmm,
is love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your being, and love your neighbor as yourself. The rest is
exactly.
all commentary.
Because
That
you
that's
are
all.
yourself. Because you are if everyone came from Adam, and I know that story is just a story, but it's still an allegory that works. Um, we're all quantum entangled together. So when I say these religions are from the same source, they're quantum entangled, someone could come back and say, well, that means everything comes from the same source. Yes, you're right.
Exactly. And that's the whole point. And it's clearly delineated in the Christian scriptures that his will is that none should perish, but all should come to repentance. And that's the whole point. It's like this splitting hairs and this division and this fighting over all of these man-made dogmas that have been come to be attached to religious beliefs. That is wherein people get hung up all the time, and that's what they've weaponized and used against us, all these different differences in how we acknowledge and express our worship for God first of all, and our acknowledgement of that, and of being able to empathize with somebody else and put ourselves in their shoes. They've weaponized this against us. They've tried to dehumanize one another, one faction from another, so that we don't see each other as human, as on the same level anymore. And then you have people who think they are superior to others, or that somehow they are better than someone, or they're a chosen group by God, when that's not what the true religions and true religious ideologies teach. It's love one another as I have loved you. That's what God tells us. So that's not about sowing more division and hatred and that kind of thing, and somehow feeling you're better than somebody else because you read something they didn't. Like, think about that. And that's a lot of the, like, this hubristic nonsense that goes on within the auspices of these secret society groups at the highest most levels and stuff too. They think they're better than you, and that's these people, these dark occultists who run things at the top of the power structure. That's how I refer to them all the time. They're the ones that have sown these seeds into all these major religious outlets and used it as a shield. You hit that perfectly, Richard. It is. It's a husk. It's a shield. They embed themselves within and use that people group as a shield for all that they do, to deflect blame from the real culprits and to protect themselves by just using this mass of people as a defense against anybody who would oppose what they're doing. So you dare not question them, or you'll be labeled. You're anti Semitic if you question this Zionist nation state of Israel, which for some reason or another in the mainline religions of the world has been conflated with the Israel of the Bible, and they're two separate different things.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason, I understand some of the reason why that's been done, and it has to do with some of the prophecies made in Scripture. And of course, this was what has been weaponized now against us by these dark occultists. They know the Scriptures, and that's the thing. They know them because they use it as a blueprint, as a playbook, and they know what you believe about it. So they steer things in that direction. So you look at this happening and say, this is a fulfillment of prophecy. And yes, it is, but they brought it about on purpose as a weaponized form of that. So it's kind of like a self fulfilling prophecy in one way. Now, does that mean that it's not accurate? No. If anything else, it means it's even more accurate. So you need to pay attention to it. It doesn't make the scriptures untrue that they do this. In fact, if anything, it makes them more true. You can count on it because they're using it as a playbook, and it may not
Mm.
look exactly how you would envision it, because much of this is described in symbolic terms. And when you look at like the book of Revelation or something like that, this is what John the Revelator saw in the heavenly realms, in the spiritual realms happening. So it's not going to literally look like locusts coming up from the ground and stuff like that, like how it's been described in the physical world here. We don't know what it's going to look like, okay? Because this is what's happened in the spiritual, according to John the Revelator. And we could see some of that stuff coming to fruition right now. So they do use the archetype, and that's the important part. The archetype. It always ties back to the archetype, and they always kind of leverage the synchromystic metadata in this way as well. And I would say there's spiritual powers involved with this. This goes beyond just the scope of human beings steering and directing things. Now, yes, there are high level occultists sitting in positions of power in this world that do manipulate things to a certain degree, but by and large, there's spiritual entities, intelligences, forces outside of them that steer and guide and direct these things. And thus, we see a lot of these tells out there in this synchromystic metadata field, the greater zeitgeist, as we like to call it. So we could pick these little bits of information apart. And we've been doing this now, Richard. Like we had opened the show with. We were talking about this stuff way back in what, January, February, before the Pope died, about this reemergence of the Roman Empire, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, which is referred to in the Bible as Babylon. Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen. Well, many a Christian scholar and theologian will tell you that Babylon in this context is the Roman Empire. So therefore, it was destined to rise and fall twice. And of course, with the death of the Pope, we see this fulfillment. And now, with this unification of the Church of England, with the Vatican again symbolically, this represents a step forward as far as the refoundation of this Roman Empire in the Western world. And we've been talking about this for a long time. You could go back I did a show a while ago, and I actually have it out there in book form. It's called The Red King, Alchemy and Witchcraft, which was talking about this and King Charles, his role in all of this, how he plays into the alchemical theater of the mind in this way. So this stuff's out there. If you learn how to read the metadata, you could see it coming and maybe make some predictions on it. Now, does it always come to fruition in the way we think we see it? No. But we're seeing it now, and hindsight's always 2020, and this is part of how the revelation of the method all works. You recognize it once it's done and it's behind you. Now we know what that was for sure. We knew it was coming. We were looking for it, but we weren't looking in the right place. This is the misdirection game they always play. And this is an important thing to understand. So you might pick up on the cues ahead of time, and you might be looking in the wrong spot when it comes to fruition. And this is something that kind of quietly happened. This wasn't really a world news headline. You had to look for it. And this is the thing. Like, some of this stuff happens, and because of their system of what I call metaphysical consent that they use, they have to put it out there somewhere in public view. But it doesn't necessarily have to be headline news. So it's out there, and the story is there, and it's present. And if you know what to look for, you recognize that this is the fruition of a sort of alchemical wedding of sorts, as you alluded to there, Richard. So it is right there, even in the story, even down to the colors that they picked to wear at this ceremony. It's always present. It's always the same symbology in all of it, and it's not by accident.
No, they do it because it works, because that's how this system is designed. This is the information I believe that was in the ancient mystery schools, and that they've hidden from us. I was talking about recently. I'd love to put this um, by you as well, because we're coming to the whole Armageddon situation now. When you cross-reference the three Abrahamic religions, you can tell that the old Armageddon situation, I call it Armageddon of the brain because it's from a Michael Jackson song that I really love, but it's a great line because it does start there. Because if you had like, just for practical, like it was a play, you had the main characters, they mean different things in to the three different religions. Say, for example, Jesus obviously is the Messiah for Christianity, the Savior. But in Islam, his name is Isa, and he's a prophet, but not the Messiah. And he joins with their Pope guy called Mahdi, who takes on the Antichrist. Now, the Antichrist for those two is quite clearly the Messiah for the Jewish faith. And it's quite clear. And the Mahdi, I think it is, if I'm not wrong, if you look at the description of him, it's clearly the first horseman of the apocalypse. He's on a white horse with a crown, gets given a crown. So what I'm saying is that the whole point of this Armageddon, it would be an Armageddon of the brain. People wouldn't know what was really going on, because what they've got, it's like a I tried to explain it in my book that I'm writing at the moment, like a virtual reality game where you're all playing the same game. There's three characters you can play. You can play Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, and you all get to the end. The whole point is to get your tribe as big as possible, get to the end times, and get to Armageddon where you win the war. But when you get there, you realize that you're playing as different characters, but the characters that turn up at the end, you all have a different subtext for them. So they mean different things. You're playing a virtual reality game. So when you're actually seeing the same situation happen, like that one point, that one moment where you see it all lined up, but you think it's going to go that way, they think it's going to go that way, and it's all perfectly aligned just to be a complete, excuse my language, clusterfuck. Because everybody's going to think that certain things are going to happen because all the players are there, but they mean different things for all three different Abrahamic religions. I find that absolutely fascinating. There's no way that the Mahdi guy could look exactly like the first horseman of the apocalypse. It's To me, it's like I'm not saying they were set up this way, but if there is this metaphysics, like the metadata, are we in a computer game? What the hell is going on? Because that isn't by accident to me.
No, and it's a matter of what perspective are you going into this with? That's the whole thing. It's point of view, it's worldview, it's perspective. So, which perspective are you coming from of these different three Abrahamic faiths? And you both you all arrive at the same place at the same time, and all the pieces are aligned just like they all say. But what happens then? And that's wherein there's
Mm,
a difference of opinion, and that's wherein they have us infighting as to who's gonna be the one to rule the day after all of it. And that's what it's about. It's they've weaponized all of this against us so that when you see these truths presented through these different faiths or these different sources of information, they agree on all of the major points, but there's fine points that they disagree on. And this goes across the board for all these different belief systems. This is how it operates. And this is why I do the studies and stuff that I do. I delve into the Rosicrucian literature, the Theosophical Society literature, the Freemasonic literature, the Eastern cultures literature, as much stuff as I could find, some of the oldest materials I could find. I look at the information put out by organizations like the OTO, the ones on the other side of the spectrum here too, and all of their secret doctrines align.
mm.
It tells you all the same thing, just with different terminology and maybe some little differences in nuance at the end of it all. But it's telling you true things throughout it. And that's what's the important part. We need to be able to pick out the bits that are true and understand their truths because we've cross referenced them against all these different other systems, and we could come to determine some validation to it that there's a modicum of truth to what's being said in these certain parts because they align across the board. Now, when you get to some of these differences in nuance of opinion with certain things, this is where conflict is created, and this is leveraged on purpose by these dark powers at the top of the power structure in this world. That's what they want. They want us fighting with each other. And in the meantime, they're pushing forward their agendas that they want quietly in the background while we're busy fighting amongst ourselves. And they laugh at us all the way to the bank with it. And that's the thing. And they don't have a dog in the fight. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way. That's probably the best phrase. They don't have a dog in the fight as to this religious doctrine or that religious doctrine. They don't care. They think it's all nonsense. Okay? The vast majority of those controllers who've infiltrated believe it's all nonsense and they think they know something more or something better because they weaponize these occult belief systems and knowledge against us because they know some of the superstructure of this place, for lack of better terminology. They know the framework with how things operate. They've learned how to manipulate these forces of nature and the psychology of mankind, the psyche of mankind. They've learned to manipulate that to bring into fruition the things that they want. Like I said, it's always that thesis, antithesis, synthesis combination. They do that. They use the polarities because it's a necessary thing and it's part of how the power structure in this world works. It's how the natural world works. You have polarities, and if you know how to play the polarities one off the other, it's like the dichotomy between electricity and magnetism. It's the same force, it's the same thing, it's just two polarized ends of it. And they play it back and forth, and if they could play it to the center, they could generate whatever they want with it. And that's what they do with all of these different systems. And it's hard for people to really step outside the box and look at it from this neutral perspective. I say that because I'm surrounded a lot of times with Christian people who can't step outside of their own belief system and look at it from the perspective of what these people are looking at it from to understand what it is they're doing and how they're operating. And that's difficult. That makes it very difficult because they refuse to step out of that little box and be able to look at this with an objective point of view
But wait,
rather than
why do that? That's a really interesting point, and I completely agree with you. Being someone who's not of a religion, I have faith in humans, and good. But why do they? Are they scared of being punished? Is this that punishment thing? They're scared of being led astray, punished, because what can be that guiding light for everyone who goes, to me, it's like if you tell me that someone else should die because they don't believe the same thing I do, I'm not going along with that. Like they're very, very logical, easy concepts that a child can get. I'm not going to punch someone in the face because it's not a nice thing. You know, they're not that hard to, it's almost like they've just got rid of these quite easy, basic understandings. So when the biblical texts are I'm not saying they say that. I'm saying that they're interpreted in a certain way. And the Zohar, you have all these additional texts that tell you what this says about this says, and this says about that bit says, and it gets purposely convoluted. What can be people's guiding light there? Can it come down to the simple nature of that's not a very nice thing to do, and I wouldn't want it done to me?
Right. Well, a lot of this falls back on what has actually become of the religious culture in this world, especially the Christian religious culture and the worldview. They have a lot of people who've put out a lot of different teachings. They have Bible concordances and stuff that they use to help them to analyze scripture. And all this falls back to hermeneutics, biblical hermeneutics. It's the interpretation of the scriptures. Now, most churches in America and Western culture, they interpret the scripture in a couple different ways. They interpret it. Many of the Christian uh, the different Christian denominations right now, they will actually look at it and they will use the literal interpretation of what's written on the page, and they're literalists. Then there's some that will just take the moral meaning or the moral lesson from the scripture and utilize that. This is all something called hermeneutics. It's about the different ways that you could interpret scripture. Now, a lot of this has been confused and convoluted, and you have a couple main publishing companies that have actually grabbed hold of this and put out things like a Schofield Bible or these different concordances that get used at these different universities that teach the up and coming pastors and ministers and stuff of the faith. So they get taught just certain things within their different denomination as being true, and they don't want to stray from that. And they believe that to be true, and they have a hard time separating themselves from their beliefs. And this is something that I've heard other people express before. You are not your beliefs. And that's what people get hung up on. They think they are their beliefs and they dare not separate their mind from looking at it through their filter of their beliefs for a second and try to see it from another perspective. That's what's been lost because of the way that they've infiltrated into mainline Christianity and weaponized it against the people. So many Christians in many of the different denominations and churches are pretty much taught any of that occult literature, don't look at that. That's evil. That's of the devil. Don't even look at it. It's not good for you. And they won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. So they wouldn't consider anything like looking at the teachings of the Rosicrucians or the teachings of the Freemasons or anything like that. They wouldn't want to look at that because it's not holy in their view. So they've been taught not to look at that stuff, first of all, or to think of it as all being silly or nonsensical. And that goes across the board with Western culture in general, not just the religious people, but anything that you would look at where it's the occult, it's witchcraft, it's stuff like this that they are looking at, they'll think of it as silly. And they've done this through a very carefully orchestrated New Age movement. And that's why this New Age movement came out. It was to kind of discredit a lot of the occult sciences that have been used by these people in control so that people think of it as silly and nonsensical. So therefore, they put your horoscope in the newspaper. Oh, that's just nonsense. So people think of astrology as nonsense when nothing could be further from the truth. It's not nonsense. There's very real energies that hit us from the sky here on Earth that affect us in many ways. It's demonstrable. Just look at the sun. There's your primary example. The moon, there's another example. But at any rate, that's a bit of a side trail with that. But certainly we've seen this problem. A lot of it has turned into man made dogma, whereas Christians are told, don't look at that. The Bible tells us this, and they give one interpretation of Scripture that they hold up as absolute gospel with it, that they hold that as the true doctrine and nothing else. This Scripture can't possibly mean anything else. That's what's been weaponized in this way, and that's why a lot of Christians can't separate themselves from their beliefs for a minute and look at it from this more objective point of view, from somebody who may want to say, manipulate that or use that and weaponize that against them. It's like, what kind of an example could we give here? Like, there's so many examples we could give of this, of how if you know something somebody else doesn't, or you know that they believe something in particular, then you could use that against them. Like, that's what's been done here. and I don't know the best way to describe this, and I hope I'm not losing people in speaking in this way, but that's what has happened. You've had infiltration into all the churches, and they've essentially shut people's brains down to accepting maybe some alternative perspective as to what is the true interpretation of this scripture. And that's the whole point of scripture. That's why the Bible is such a foundational document. You could find encapsulated in that the entirety of what it means to be human. It's encapsulated in the stories in that book. And there's so many different interpretations of each scripture that it'll jump out of off the page at you at any given time, because you could apply it to different situations in your own life. And it has different meanings at different times when you look at it through different hermeneutical lenses of observation. But that's been lost on most people who have become the regular attenders of church, or the religious structure in this world. Most, they go to church on Sundays and they don't really know. They don't study deeply. They just listen to what the preacher from the pulpit tells them, and they believe that. And they dare not stray or think of any kind of questions about that, or question that, or look at it from some other point of view, because they're afraid somehow or another that will taint their faith or something like that, or make them unholy and unacceptable to God. So it is kind of that fear factor that plays
Yeah.
in with a lot as well. And that's been weaponized as well. So I know that's a lengthy answer, and I hope it makes sense, because sometimes it's very hard to express these ideas with our limited language.
Yeah, it is. And this whole fear of being not accepted, not judged, and judged for not believing something. It's always fascinated me that, we're put here, we don't know where we come from, we don't know where we go next, and we're supposed to get it right. This, like what you're talking about. You put me in a, you know, you wait till I fell asleep, you drop me off at play school, and I haven't got a clue how I got here, and I don't know how you're going to come back and get me. What do you think? I'm supposed to, of course, I'm going to be mental, because this isn't, you've put me in a situation that's designed to drive you mental, because you're not getting any answers to any, no real answers. So you're going to look like, not in the way we want to know. So of course you're going to, like you can't, I don't even know what to say. There's no words for it. You're just trying to figure it out like everybody else is. And have weaponized that fear of not knowing. You don't have a clue. It is scary. I lost my dad a year ago, and it's like, where is he? Where's he gone? He's not here. And he's not in. It's just like mad. Changed me, because I was like, I don't really care. A lot of my cares went away in a really strange way, because I was like, you know what? I'm lucky just to doing this stuff. And then I don't know. I don't know. And anyone who tells you that they do, they are lying to you, because they don't know. They might have faith, they might have beliefs, but they don't know. So what, let's end it here then. So we've seen these two sides, these alchemically entangled, quantum entangled parts of the Christian faith coming back together. What do you see happening from here? I know there's an Abrahamic village in Abu Dhabi. I can't remember the name of it. That's what I was looking for earlier on my phone, by the way. I wasn't being rude. I was trying to find it and I couldn't find. I spoke about it in this week's show. So in Abu Dhabi, they've created this. They call it the Abrahamic village, and it is in Abu Dhabi, for God's sake. So they're pushing towards a one world religion, aren't they? So how do you see it going from here, maybe in the next few years?
I think the letter from Albert Pike to Giuseppe Mazzini outlined it perfectly. That's exactly what they're looking to do. What they're trying to do is they're trying to provoke hostilities between the Islamic world and the Christian world, in order to make this catalyzing event happen, wherein people just become completely overwhelmed, exhausted, and just to the point, the breaking point, with all of this fighting and these religious ideologies and stuff like that, to where they just give up. That's what they're looking for. They want people to just give up and go along with whatever system they lay out. And of course, they'll use this to manufacture crises. Now, what exactly are these crises going to look like? Hard to say for sure, but I think we got a preview back in 2020, didn't we?
Hmm.
As to what some of this might look like, and you could see how you could get worldwide compliance with a lot of this stuff, at least the vast majority. So I'm sure it'll be weaponized in some way, shape, or form like that. And of course, one of the big stepping stones for all of this is digital ID. Because don't you know, if you don't want the Muslim invaders to invade your city, well, you have to get ID'd. So we could protect you from that. Everybody's got to have an ID to get around in the city, don't you know, and to do business, because we don't want to let that unsavory element in, because now we're beginning to see what happens when you let them in and they infiltrate into positions of power and stuff like that. That's the narrative they're building right now. Okay, let's go ahead and just identify that. It doesn't have to be true, but that's the narrative they're planting. It's the same thing with all of these story elements they use. They don't care if it's true or not. It doesn't have to be true. But if they can convince enough people that it's true, then they got you. COVID was a perfect example of that. Look at how the world has been transformed over the course of the last 5 years because of that, in so many ways that we never would have conceived of back in 2019. And here we are today. It's the same type of a thing. It's the same type of a thing that they'll use. Same type of a strategy. And if you think it won't happen, pay attention. Stick around a little while, because it's happening in front of our eyes. And we called it, didn't we, Richard?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, in the UK here we have two incidents, well, three incidents actually, of someone being accidentally let out of prison who happens to be of a sort of certain faith, not certain
Oh, is
faith.
that happening there too? That's happening in America. What a coincidence.
Yeah, three times. A guy that had sexually abused a young girl and a woman, he was let out, accidentally let out, and even tried to hand himself in. And then again, a couple of days ago, similar things happened as well. And they weren't Muslim, but it doesn't really matter to most people because it's the reason for having, oh, we need digital ID because these mistakes are happening. I didn't know it was happening there where you are as well.
Yeah, that's happening here too, where they had some illegal immigrant was in jail and they accidentally let him go. That was in California, I think, earlier this week. It's amazing how this stuff always happens across the board around the world. Like you said, it's the same old tired playbook. They
It
can't
is.
help themselves, Richard. They do it all the time. If you're not paying attention, you don't necessarily see it. But it's happening in the UK. It's happening here in America. London has an Islamic mayor. Am I not correct with that? Is that right?
The main,
And now
yeah, London does, yeah.
New York City has an Islamic mayor, and we're seeing all of this stuff happening, or at least the media is portraying it this way.
Yeah.
Whereas you have all of these Muslim violence and stuff going on in places, and how we're going to see all of this now in New York. They're playing it up. It doesn't have to be true. That's what the important thing people need to remember is, it doesn't have to be true, but if they can convince enough people that it is true, then in a sense it becomes true. It's the mind game. It's the mind control programming that they use. It's the way that they affect the human psyche, the human mind with this stuff. It's all part of their tools that they use to manipulate us. And the media is always complicit in a lot of this. So yeah, that's happening here in America too. That's funny you should mention that.
It's Armageddon of the brain, as I said. Where can people find your work? And we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time.
All right, people could find me at www.alchemicaltechrevolution.com. And where could the good people find you, Richard?
Video content is on iconic.com, and you can find me, Some May Conspire, on Substack. And I think we're both working on books, so mine will be out hopefully in January in the new year. How are you getting on with yours?
Mine, I'm hoping to have out by the end of the month here, Richard. So
Oh, amazing. There you go then.
this one's an interesting one for sure. It may turn some people's worldviews on their head.
Well, let's get you. I'll get you on. We'll do something special for Iconic, and I'll try and help you get these guys to know about your book as well, because I love your content. As absolute honor and a pleasure as it always is to chat to you. I think we're doing this. It's got to be coming up a year now, Synchromistic. So thank you guys for sticking with us. This again is the information you're not going to find anywhere else. And you've got two people here that haven't got the same religion, but have, as I said earlier, the same faith in humanity and common decency, and that's really all we need. We're someone I think very highly of you, Wayne, and your work. And I just think people need to kind of see that in each other a little bit more.
Right, I agree, Richard, and the same here. I have nothing but the utmost respect and love for you, my brother. So that's the point. We could get along. We could disagree on the minutia, guys. That's the important thing. We could disagree on the fine points and the little points, But what we need to understand is we have a common enemy, and that is this group that's kind of positioned itself behind the scenes in the positions of power and shielded itself from the masses here. And we need to really learn to get along, even though we may disagree on some things. We could still be friends. And that's something that's been socially engineered into humanity at this point, too. Whereas if you disagree with me, you're my enemy. No, that's not the case. We could still be friends and not agree on everything. And that's fine. Life would be pretty boring if we agreed on everything, wouldn't it?
Well, it will be, yeah, and it will be if they get their digital ID because you'll have to agree on everything because you will be getting certain points because of it. We'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Please share this podcast around. Take care.